Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
At 16 years old, I was at Bear Paw Scout Camp for my fourth and final stay there. My friends and I were the adventurous type and always up to no good, running off to smoke cigarettes, shaking beehives to see how many times we could get stung before chickening out, and generally causing a ruckus. Bear Paw Scout Camp was pretty big. It consisted of Bear Paw Lake, purchased in 1946, a significant year, and had this thing called the Order of the Arrow. Essentially, it was a Boy Scout attempt at creating a secret order, but it mostly made a mockery of Native American heritage. The land itself used to belong to the Menominee tribe. As an inductee into this secret order, I was told I could never speak of it to non-inductees. During the public ceremony, members of the Boy Scouts crew would dress up as Native Americans, bang drums, dance around ridiculously, and twirl fire, all to create the illusion of a Native American ritual. This post isn't about that, though. I'm merely providing some background about the land's history and spirituality. One day, my friends and I were hanging out near the boat launch close to where we held the flag ceremonies. A discussion arose about an old counselor named Bob Saffron. We were told Bob had an affinity for the rifle and archery ranges, spending most of his time there even after retiring. He loved all things involving projectiles and teaching others. People said he was so connected to the campground that you could sometimes smell the remnants of the cherry cigars he used to smoke. Later that day, we wandered over to the Field of Dreams. This was a big open field with a shower house nearby that broke off into two paths, the rifle clay shooting range on the left and the archery range on the right. In front of the shower house, about 50 yards away, was a trail that ran parallel to the south side of the field. My last night at Bear Paw was absolutely insane, and this is the story I've been dying to share. On a late June night around 8:30 p.m., my friends Ian, Andy, Mike, Forrest, and I were out on the trail facing the shower house in the Field of Dreams. We ran into the counselor who had told us the story of Bob Saffron earlier. Facing the field and the shower house, we noticed the light above the entrance casting its glow eastward, illuminating the area where a sprinkler system was running, creating a fine mist in the air. For reasons I can't explain, maybe because of childhood games like Bloody Mary, we decided it would be funny to chant, "Bob Saffron, show yourself," as a group. We did this half-jokingly, all participating. On the third call, I'll never forget this moment, the sprinkler mist condensed into a form. It took the shape of a humanoid figure, a tall, slender, misty white being, like something straight out of the movie Signs. It had a clear head, arms, legs, and torso, and it was standing directly in front of us. The moment it appeared, I felt an overwhelming wave of energy drain from my body. I was consumed by absolute terror. Even now, just thinking about it gives me goosebumps. It was like waking up with sleep paralysis, a surreal, horrifying shift in reality. The figure stood there for maybe 1 second before bolting across the 100-yard field into the woods. It moved impossibly fast, 25 to 30 miles per hour at least, far too quick to be a human or a prank. It had no visible feet or hands, but its movement was unmistakable. We all screamed bloody murder and ran faster than we ever had, straight back to our campground. We tried explaining what we had seen to our chaperones, but the story sounded utterly absurd even to us. Our campsite had army tents on platforms with cots inside, but we usually slept around the campfire when the weather permitted. That night, because of what had happened, we stayed up talking about the event until around midnight before finally falling asleep. As usual, I woke up in the middle of the night lying on my cot in my sleeping bag. The only light came from the glowing embers of the fire, and the air was cold enough that I could see my breath. I turned my head to the left and saw my friend Forrest sitting in one of those foldable cloth camping chairs. "Hey Forrest," I asked, "what are you doing awake?" But then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed someone sleeping in a cot to my right. That was Forrest. I whipped my head back to the chair, and it was empty. Panic gripped me. My mind raced to stay calm. How could I wake everyone up without making things worse? At that exact moment, Ian, across from me, stirred and muttered, It's fucking freezing. I seized the opportunity. Ian, wake the hell up, I hissed. Something's going on. He groggily got up, and I convinced him to help me wake the others and throw more wood on the fire. Together, we woke Forrest, Andy, and Mike, and soon we were all sitting by the fire, recounting the night's events in hushed voices. About 30 minutes later, we saw it. From the depths of the woods, a light appeared at eye level. It bobbed gently as it approached, like someone walking with a flashlight. We all noticed it immediately. "Who the hell is walking through the woods this late?" one of us asked. The light came closer slowly but steadily over the next 5 minutes. As it drew nearer, we realized it wasn't a person at all. It was a glowing, swirling orb, bright and almost moon-like. It emerged from the woods, floated around the campground's outhouse, ascended into the air, and hovered for a moment as if observing us. Then it darted back into the forest, leaving us speechless. None of us said a word for what felt like an eternity. We stayed awake by the fire, too afraid to sleep, until the first light of dawn broke the darkness. The oddest part? Later we heard stories from counselors about a mysterious light that sometimes appeared over Bear Paw Lake or near the nearby train tracks. No one had ever figured out what it was, but that night, it came to us. To this day, I am convinced that whatever it was wanted to send a message, a warning perhaps, about the land's mistreatment and the mockery of its heritage. Has anybody else ever had an encounter that shaped the rest of their lives like this?
Had a weird experience while lying in bed. To give some context, I've been up to some stuff lately. For the last 2 months, I've been trying to contact outer beings. I've performed 2 rituals that involved intense meditation, to limited effects, and trying to connect my mind to the higher dimension. Both times I've felt like I was so close to replicating a feeling I had when I was a kid, where I thought I was sharing my thoughts with a higher entity, but couldn't quite get there. Just now, almost immediately before writing this, I was lying in bed when I started experiencing that same feeling. It started as a feeling that something was off, but I can't quite pinpoint what. I felt like I was sliding slightly up and to the left, even though I was perfectly still. Suddenly, I couldn't feel my body, except for my hands, because they were touching each other. I was only aware of 3 things at that time: my hands, my heartbeat, and my brain. Suddenly, I felt like my entire body was just my brain, or that my brain was starting to become my entire body, like my brain was growing. At this point, my teeth touched in the inside of my mouth, and my perception of them suddenly jolted into my brain. It was like there were mountains in my mouth. They felt so massive. At this point, I started feeling a sense of dread, like something really bad was going to happen if I stayed like this, but I kept enduring it. I needed to experience as much as possible if I wanted to replicate this feeling later. This was a huge breakthrough for me. I became aware of my entire room, visualizing everything that was inside. My bookshelf, my desk, my nightstand, my filing cabinet, the standing fan. Everything, except I couldn't see the visualization. I was perceiving without perception. It felt like my brain was my entire bedroom, squeezing against my walls and taking the shape of the room, square and encompassing. It was at this point that I lost the sensation of feeling my hands and heartbeat. I wasn't aware of anything except my own thoughts and mind by this point. My brain still felt like it was sliding or moving to the left, but every time it would snap back into place, over and over again. I normally see lights when my eyes are closed, like clouds made of blue that undulate, expanding and contracting in my visual sphere, except this time I couldn't see that. I could only see darkness, or rather it would be more accurate to say that I couldn't see anything at all, not even darkness. It was like my entire brain was disconnecting from my senses. Then I felt my brow furrow and the front of my head snap to life. I was aware of it now. I could see the black again. Everything was swirling, spinning, and moving now, like my brain became water. I started seeing visualizations of things that I can't even describe. Surfaces pocked with deep, dark cuts of contrast on a white landscape. Extremely soft, smooth surfaces that were enormous. I don't know how big, but my perception was that they were too gigantic to comprehend them. Sharp metallic shapes covered in spikes that shortened and lengthened at random, but seemed impossibly jagged. At this point, the feeling of dread had overwhelmed me. I opened my eyes, but it was too dark to see, so the visualizations persisted in the absence of perception. I started grabbing around for some kind of light and found my phone, which I turned on. The feeling of dread hung over me for a while after that. I can still feel it a little bit. My brain doesn't quite feel correct now, like it's been turned around in my skull and is now facing the wrong way. But overall, I feel fine. I need to replicate this feeling in my next ritual and see if I can contact the being I've been trying to contact for a long time but have been unable to do so.
I just want to share a few stories about my childhood. Maybe you guys can weigh in on what was happening at the time. I don't post on here often, and I feel like Greentexts will, hopefully, break up the story well, so it's not just a wall of text. My grandma died a few weeks after I was born due to cancer. My mom inherited the house she lived in, cleaned it up because grandma was a huge hoarder. After cleaning, she was taking a short video of a tour around the house and recorded me playing by my grandma's curio cabinet, or whatever it's called. There's a light in the curio cabinet showing off my grandma's fine china. She goes on the balcony, records the backyard, and says something about her mum. My mum turns back around in the living room, where I was at, to find that the light was shut off. From the video, you can see me looking curiously at the cabinet, pointing at it. I was too young to speak, so I babbled something in baby speak. My mum was obviously surprised. I didn't unplug it, and the light wasn't dead. She says that her mum must have stopped by to say hi to me. This is really, really tame compared to the stuff my family experienced. I'll tell more stories if there's any interest because I promise I have more interesting ones. Same house, but slightly older, would get this weird feeling about the basement. It wasn't the stereotypical, ooh, scary basement. It was actually pretty nice. Lots of natural lighting, but even still, I always felt as if something was off, especially in the dark. Years later, I was having a conversation with my mum about that house. That's where I got a lot of my info from. She said that whenever it was dark in the basement, in the furthest corner, away from any natural light, there would be this static sound and this radio chatter. There was no radio, and there never was a radio down there in that corner. Now that one was short and still may. I'll give you something more to chew on in a bit. I just have to type it out. Still the same house? Older? Now in preschool or kindergarten? I can't remember which exactly. Would always have night terrors according to my mom. Would scream and cry about suffocating and choking in my sleep. For some reason, I would always choke out my stuffed animals. My mum remembers very vividly a time where I would have a comb and pin down my Mickey Mouse Stuffy by the neck with it. Would always hit my mum. This was very out of character for me, as when we moved out, for very unrelated reasons, I was the complete opposite of this. Anyways, fast forward a while, and I would always have this fascination with choking. Unrelated to this story in particular, I remember always dreaming about demons before I knew what they were. Back to it. Later, my mum was talking to the neighbor, someone who was living in the neighborhood a lot longer than my grandma did. She was airing out her concerns about me being violent and having night terrors and the like. Then she mentions the choking. My mom doesn't remember the whole story, but I guess before my grandma bought the house, a teenager hung himself in the garage due to heartbreak. That's pretty much it from me. As far as spooky stories that I remember, I know when we moved, there weren't many issues with the paranormal. The only thing I could possibly think of is that the TV would make weird buzzing sounds and then turn off every now and then, but that could be anything.
Alright/X/ I have a story for you. It's a little convoluted, but I genuinely need advice if anyone's experienced the same thing. I'll start where it all began, over a decade ago. Be me, first year of high school. Somehow get a girlfriend, she lives in the same neighborhood. Also start being interested in the occult. One night while biking home, a streetlight goes off right as I pass underneath it. Like it just dies. Creeped out a little, but thought nothing of it. This happens to me basically every time I take that route since then. One time I tried to film it on my camera, and another streetlight in the periphery of my vision switches off instead. I book it home and decide to no longer bike that route to my house. Now I've had many other strange experiences I won't get into, going to stay on topic as much as possible. This trend continues. In my later teen years, delivering pizza or whatever, streetlights will randomly shut off right at the moment I pass or park underneath them. Sometimes they will switch to a dimmer, flickering type state. Sometimes will look more blue in color. Sometimes they'll be in this dim, flickering state and then come on brightly as I get near them and remain on. I've tried to rationalize that it's just faulty electronics or whatever, but no one else I talk to has had the same experience. Meet druggie friend during druggie days. The exact same thing happens to him since the same age. We are actually able to relate over this as it would happen to the both of us together. Share theories on what it is. He's just as clueless. He is now dead, died 2 years ago from OD. Still eats me up a bit as his last text to me was asking me to talk the night he died. I didn't respond as I was trying to distance myself from his lifestyle. Major guilt. This phenomenon has happened so much to me I literally have dozens of videos of it saved. Fast forward to now, I moved to a different city. No friends, no one, kind of sucks. Small college town. But I digress, thinking I left this spooky chapter of my life behind. One night I went onto the back patio of my apartment for a smoke. Light attached to the exterior of the apartments directly across from me immediately switches off. WTF.PG. It followed me here. This happens now every time I go out of my apartment at night. A light adjacent to it also switches on and off and turns a bluish hue sometimes, starting doing this after the first one. It's become so normalized to me I barely think about it, but it always seems to happen whenever I'm present around electronic lights. Some of the earlier times were much more blatant, like as soon as I park the light comes on, or shuts off, giving me a chilling feeling, unsure of what is causing this. Creeps me out. Anyone else have similar experiences or know anything more as to what this could be? I could post videos of it if someone tells me how to do WebMs. It's pretty boring for the most part though. Just dozens of videos of basically what I described happening.
Hey X, have a story to share with you all and get insights. For the preface, I am not someone who frequents X, usually hang around G, nor believed in the paranormal, till now. The most I have seen is probably some random short recommended on YouTube, so some context links on terms you share will be appreciated. Anyway, this is going to be a long one, so bear with me. First is my memory of the incident. I'm 8 or 9 years old. Dad works for the UN, gets transferred around to different countries, gets posted to Eritrea, an East African country, a chill and kinda backward country. We moved to an expat living area called Sembel. Need an international school since I don't know the local language, Tigrinya, and there's no benefit to learning it. Settle for a school called International Community School that's near and cheap. The school has a lack of students and staff, just barely managing in a rented property. One day during lunch break, not many kids and teachers around, I can't remember why, probably an event or something. Playing chain. It's like a mix of hide and seek and catch. Whoever is seen has to be caught, and then they walk around arms linked and catch the rest. Decide to hide in an empty classroom. Get bored after a few minutes and decide to peek out of the door. There's only one door, so I'd be caught instantly if they saw me. So I left it open anyway to avoid suspicion. The window of the classroom is shattered from the outside, completely surprised and scared, not of why or how the window broke, but of being caught up in the problem and getting punished too. Immediately after a short shock, dart out of the room, push aside whoever broke it without looking at them as I run past. Didn't go the opposite way since there were people there who'd spot me, and the shove barely moved them much. Immediately go to find the catcher of the game, a friend, to get caught. There are already about 3 friends caught. At this point, I don't even care about the game, but I'm just creating an alibi, hoping to say I was there the whole time. The game ends in a few minutes as we catch the last one. I wanted to check what happened during the incident, so I convinced a friend to pass by that area to see what happened. A huge crowd was over there, so I convinced my friend to go check it out. I asked someone what happened as if I were clueless. I was told that someone broke a glass window. I nodded and saw a teacher raging there and asking how no one saw who did it. An investigation began. Somehow I escaped by saying I was with friends during the game. No one disagreed, so I was safe. After school, the teacher was still searching as I left, but I forgot the incident completely once I was outside. At the next day's assembly, the teacher called out and punished one student while the incident was recounted, keeping their last names secret. But if someone from then sees this, they'll probably remember who I'm referring to. 2 kids, Akshay and Charles, were caught as responsible. Akshay had glass pieces wedged into his hand and was bleeding heavily from his hand when caught by the investigating teacher. He had apparently rubbed his hands with his sweater, so the lower half was dyed red. He claimed that he was sitting in that classroom when Charles came and shattered the window. Akshay said he raised his hand to protect himself from glass pieces, and that's how it happened. At assembly, Charles still loudly denied it, saying he was the one sitting inside, and Akshay had shattered the window. I pitied Charles since I partly believed him, as I was inside and saw Akshay, or who I assumed was Akshay, break it. I also knew he was lying about being inside to make his story more credible, and himself the victim. I was never going to rat myself out, and was glad I got out safe while being the only one who knew what really happened. smugpepe.png. I knew that Akshay and Charles had a friends-enemies relationship who always attacked or blamed each other from the start, so I didn't think much of it. Fast forward to last week, and while idly thinking, I remembered this incident. This case, I won't be sharing their names since I don't want the mentioned to know. Posting this here too, since I know both of them don't visit here. Let's call my friends J, him, and T, her. Back in that country, we really didn't have the internet at all, nor bothered with last names or phone numbers, since we weren't allowed to use it. The only reason I have contact with these two is that we're from the same country, so my parents had their numbers. So I decided to share this with Jay, so I called up the guy and tell him the story on Sunday morning. He laughs and tells me I got some of the details wrong, and that it was actually his story. Says he probably told me sometime later, and my mind mistook it as my own. Believe him after a bit of convincing. Same night, decide to share this event with T and text her for a call. She's busy with exams. During the call, narrate the incident and laugh. She's silent for nearly 30 seconds after I narrate the story. When I'm thinking the connection is lost and about to be cut, she starts rapidly saying, "How did you know?" Get confused at her agitation and ask her to calm down and explain. She finally says it was her who experienced this and no one else should know. Unlike Jay, who might share, she planned to take it to her grave, and the details are different. Now I'm freaking out a bit too and asking her to explain. She's clearly losing it. She's always been bad with horror and weird stories. She cuts the call and texts she wants no part in this. Remember, she has exams and needs to concentrate. Somehow get her on another call and ask her to explain her version of events. More on this later. Rapidly fills me in and cuts. Message her thanks, I'm blocked. Oh well, understandable. After that, I discussed this with Jay as well on Wednesday, and here's what I pieced together. Red line is me, Green Tea, and Blue Jay. We all remember being part of the incident. The details differ, but in our own versions, we're all inside the room when the glass breaks. All 3 of us ran away and then checked later as if we never knew. For our own reasons, we didn't share the story with anyone immediately. Jay's version. He walked into the room for no reason. Glass was shattered. He also runs out. Unlike me, however. He covers his face and goes the opposite way, but reaches the approximate area I did. We both don't remember running into each other there. T's story, this is a bit less focused, but does have some extra details. She was in the room to complete her homework for next period, sitting on the farthest desk from the window. Glass shatters, she screams, grabs her books and darts out the opposite way, does not cover her face. She looks back, sees a man standing there like a shadow figure void man. She runs all the way to the front gatekeeper, and he consoles her till she calms down. Looking back on it, there's so many oddities I ignored. Yeah, when I shoved it, it didn't move much at all. It did look completely black to me, and I couldn't remember any features. I initially attributed this to me not paying attention since it was unimportant or tunnel vision in a panic, but I'm now wondering if that really was the case or if it didn't have any features in the first place. It was 12 p.m. during lunch break. The sun is above our heads in Africa, so there's no way their features can be obscured by shadows. Now I'm wondering, what if Akshay and Charles had the same experience, only they mistook the person outside to be the other due to their past. Also, that should have been a big incident considering the size of our school, but none of the kids talked about it. Similarly, It's confusing how the glass shattering didn't attract everyone's attention, or anyone who saw us running away didn't report it or ask us. That was something I never cared about back then, since I was nervous to speak about it. But what if everyone had such similar experiences, and so no kid was willing to speak? As I've shown in the pic, I do remember there being people who could have seen it happen, or anyone leaving that area. I do remember the class teacher and my parents cautioning me about it, though, so I don't think the adults knew. Now I regret not having contacts with anyone still there or my own classmates. I did try looking up the place on maps for a pic to use, but the layout looks completely different now. I'm just going by the label in Asmara, Eritrea now. The place does look similar if I remove the tin constructions I remember. The distance from Semble roughly matches as well. So what do you guys think about this? Speculations and related stories are welcome too. The closest I got was shadow people. There was near Lathotep too, but I'm definitely sure I didn't feel any horror. Did consider time loops, parallel universes too. There's nothing I found on shared experiences like this though.
Hello/X/. This is a story told by my uncle that, to this day, he swears is true. I don't remember all of it, so I'll try and tell it as accurately as possible. The uncle, younger at the time, moved into an apartment with his mom, dad, and 2 brothers. Decent apartment. Has to share a room with his brother because only 2 rooms. Room has this big asshole in the wall across from his bed. Oh well, life is fairly normal, not much happening. One day, Mom walks into the living room. Dad and brothers are sitting there. Mom asks his dad what he wants. Confused, he says he never called her. She swears he did, but whatever. Comes in a second time, asks him why he keeps calling her. Dad literally had no idea what she's talking about. Suddenly, their toys start to go missing. Not creepy, but unusual. Fast forward a bit, Uncle trying to go to sleep. Looks across his bed and into the hole in the wall. Notices something looking back at him. It's a deer skull with jagged, sharp teeth. Immediately shits bricks, so terrified that he can't move. Stares at it for a bit before a black bony hand starts to come out of the hole. Arm is unreasonably long, same characteristics as the hand. Uncle still can't move, continues to shit bricks. Hand grabs onto Uncle's ankle and begins to pull him toward the wall. Uncle snaps out of it and begins to flail around and scream. Mom and Dad come in. By then, his ankle is inside the hole. Fast forward to the next day, Dad calls his brother. Both look inside the hole. It's full of the missing toys, shit bricks. Stay at Dad's brother for a bit before going back. One night, his dad wakes everyone up. We're leaving. Okay. Dad seems terrified, which is unusual. He was a very stoic man, tough, etc. They left the house with nothing but the clothes on their backs, never went back to that apartment. Dad never told anyone what he saw, took that secret to the grave. Apartment is still standing. So there's my story/X/. Sorry if it's not up to everyone's standards.
Be me, Britt Bong, who lives near a large park in a city. The park's probably about 7.5 miles around and more of a nature reserve than a park. Be absolutely wasted walking home from drinking heavily on the other side of the park around 2 a.m. Decide to climb a tree near the road, maybe 6 or 7 meters away, and see what's going on at that time of night. Not much is going on at that time of night. Eventually, some Spanish people are walking home along the road. One guy, 2 girls with a torch. I don't like Spanish people. Never took to their accents, to be honest. Fuck it. I throw a small branch towards them. It lands on the other side. They stop. Confused Spanish sounds. They start walking again, quicker. I throw another branch. They are visibly scared. I throw another one. No one ever thinks to look upwards. One of them points his torch into the woods. He looks upwards, points the torch directly at me. I freeze. This wasn't part of the plan. What the fuck do I do? More confused Spanish noises, slightly angry now. He's walking towards me. The Españolas are on the road, scared. He's getting nearer. Fuck it. In for a penny, in for a pound. He's about 2 or 3 meters away. I scream at the top of my lungs like a possessed animal and jump out of the tree. A truly inhuman sound. He spazzes out, drops the torch. He's fumbling it. I take a step towards him and then I remember I wasn't planning to actually kill anyone. Need to change gears. Fucking bolt into the woods behind me and vanish into the darkness. I'm pretty sure they probably still tell the story about the monsters that live in that park at night.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.